Hello, you lovely lot. How are you? So it's kind of an interesting one today for cooking. So I've obviously got another one to go next week. Um, but this one this week is going to be all about how to make a large rainbow cake. So we obviously need lots and lots of celebrations when we get to our summer holidays because we have come so far, we've achieved so much, and so I thought today we would make a rainbow cake. Now, I have another ulterior motive. I'm actually holding a little tea party later on. So this is going to be like a birthday cake, like a rainbow birthday cake. So what I've done is I've actually doubled the ingredients. So the ingredients I'm going to give you, I've actually doubled them. So mine is going to look way, way bigger than yours is going to look when you make yours. It's going to look very different because you're going to have half the amount of ingredients. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start it and then I'm going to hopefully be able to do a little bit of it without you having to sit and watch it because that would be very boring. So, as always, let's make sure that we have washed our hands. I have washed mine, but obviously I'm just touching my face and my hair because I can see it in my eyes. So I'm going to wash my hands again. The oven is on, as always, at its usual, 180 degrees C. And I'm washing my hands, and obviously, as always, please make sure you have asked your grown-up before you get started. Now, because this is a rainbow cake, there is going to be quite a lot of bits and pieces that we need to put together to make this happen. So I'm going to make the basic mixture for a plain sponge, but then we're going to pour it into 4 separate bowls. We're going to make it all different colours. So what I've already done, before I started recording, to save you some time and some boring, excuse me, is I have measured out my ingredients and they're already in the bowl. So all I'm going to do is start mixing that in a minute. So what you're going to need is 225 grams of self-raising flour. You're going to need 225 grams of butter. And you're going to need 225 grams of caster sugar. Now, those are the main things. Then you're only going to need 4 eggs, even though I have added, I'm wondering why the screen's gone dark. Has it gone dark for you if I hold it up like this? There we go, that's better. So you are going to need 4 eggs, but I'm using 8 because obviously I've doubled my ingredients. Oh, I've got flour all over my tummy. And you're going to need 1 teaspoon of baking powder. But like I said, I've doubled all of mine. So what I've done is I have weighed out the flour and the sugar and the baking powder. I've already mixed all of that together so it's nice and combined. And then I added in the butter. As you can see, it looks like an awful lot of ingredients, which it is, but hopefully it's going to make exactly what I need it to. So we're going to, as we normally do with the butter, is we're going to mix it into the ingredients until it resembles what looks like breadcrumbs. Now I've got a bit of a task on my hands because obviously there's an immense amount of ingredients in here. Now it does suggest that you use a whisk, an electric whisk, to mix all of these in, which would be much, much easier, but one issue with that is I don't have one. The second issue with that is that if I was trying to mix all of this with an electric whisk, it would be a horrible noise for you to be listening to. So I am just going to get my hands in. Now, what I did was, because I knew I was making this today, I actually got the butter out of the fridge yesterday and I've left it just on the side in the kitchen so that it is much, much softer than it would be if I was getting it out the fridge today. So it's actually working quite well. I may not have to do what I thought I was going to have to. I've got a little hand whisk. It's something that you might, I doubt you'll find it in your kitchen, but you might find it in your grandparents' kitchen. I'll show you when my hands aren't all covered in gooey butter and flour. And it's got a whisk attachment on the bottom and a little handle on the side. And you mix it round, you turn the handle and it mixes it, which there is a small chance that I might do that in a minute. Now, as we always say, and I've said it so many times on the last video, I'm so sorry, we must make sure we get right down to the bottom of the bowl because down there is all that flour and sugar that is missing. Ooh, went on the floor. that is missing being mixed in, and it's really important that we mix it all in. So I'm digging my hands down into the bottom to get up that nice flour and sugar mix that we can see down there. Now at the moment this is looking exactly like we want it to. So what we want it to look like is almost like breadcrumbs. So let's see if this is looking like breadcrumbs. Let's have a look. Ooh. Gilly gilly. There we are. There are still a few bits of dry ingredients down the bottom, which we don't want. So part of the issue with this is that because I'm using my hands, I've obviously melted the butter a little bit, which isn't a problem. Just going to make sure that that's still going. So let's undo all of this. There's a door slamming. I apologise for that, but I can't get to it because I've got all of this on my fingers. So that is our first part. I'm going to pick up all the bits that I've dropped on the side because it's quite important that I don't lose all of these ingredients. Put them back in there. I'm just going to wash my hands and then I can get on with the next bit. Now the next bit I'm going to choose to use a wooden spoon. So I've made sure I've got one of those nice and washed up here. So once we have done this bit, I will get the wooden spoon and we're going to add in the eggs. Now there's a lot of eggs for me to add in. I know cracking eggs is like the most exciting thing on earth, isn't it? And I've got to do 8 of them. So we'll count them in and we'll make sure that Mish doesn't get any shell in the mixture because that would be a disaster. Do we want shell in our mixture? No, we do not. So the next thing, mix all of the ingredients. So obviously now I'm going to make a little bit of a well in the middle and I'm going to crack in the eggs. So we've got 1, 2, remembering you're only doing half of this, so you'll have 4, 3, 4. Do you see how what I'm doing when I crack the egg? I make a crack and I put my thumbs in the middle and pull it apart. I'm not squeezing the shell because if I did that, we'd have shell all the way through. Crack it and make a hole, put your thumbs in the middle and very gently pull it apart. And that will save the shell going in. So that was 5. This is 6. This is 7. This is 8. Goodness gracious. What a lot of egg. Let's get rid of that a minute. Right, next job. Mixing all of this in. So I'm going to make sure I break up the yolk because that makes the mixing just a little bit easier. Break up the yolk and then I'm going to mix it in to the mixture. So sometimes if you cut holes into the dough, it makes it a little bit easier to incorporate the egg. This is the point. Once I've done the first bit of mixing, this is when I might get out my old lady whisk and see if I can give it a little bit of a whisk to make it a little bit of an easier job. Ooh, can you hear that? Gooey, gooey, gooey. So we're mixing the doughy mixture that we've got and we're making it into more of a liquid because that is what we need to make a cake. Now what I didn't want to do is put my whisk in too soon because where I've got so many ingredients in the bowl, it's all going to go over the edge. And the last thing Mish wants is a dirty kitchen. And if I got this over the surface, it would be a real mess, wouldn't it? There we go. It's a lot of work, isn't it, when you do baking? There's lots of parts to it. And I know this is going to be an annoying noise for you all to listen to. I'm sorry about that. Right, now this is what I was talking about, my old lady whisk. So it's a whisk, like this. Look, you turn the handle, you see the little bits go round. So you might find that somewhere, either in your kitchen or in your grandparents' kitchen, they've got one of these. But it means you can do that last little bit of whisking without an electric whisk. So let's see if we can make this work. There we go. Now it does need a little bit of work because it's quite a thick mixture. It would have been much easier to have done this without that. Now what I am going to say is, let's just scoop out those little bits which I believe may be shell, because we definitely don't want those in there. Right, the handle's actually come off, so I'm not going to bother, because that, as we always say, mistakes happen and that's perfectly okay. If mistakes happen, we just go with the flow and we sort it out. So we don't want to lose the mixture, so I'm just going to get the mixture out like this, and then I'm going to carry on with my wooden spoon or my metal spoon, one or the other. Now remember, I know how incredibly tempting it is to lick the bowl once you've made something like this, but whilst I'm hitting away, but don't lick this mixture, because what have we just put in? We've just put in 8 raw eggs, and that would be very bad for your tummy. If you have raw eggs, it will can make you very poorly. So we're not going to worry about having a taste test of this. We'll taste test it when it's cooked. So let's give it a mix round with this spoon. A little bit easier to do. And then we'll get at it with the wooden spoon. What we want is a nice smooth mixture. So at the moment you can see there's quite a few lumps, and what we don't want is lumps. So if you've got a lumpy cake, it means you've got little bits of flour that haven't been mixed in. Oh, nearly there. It's looking like quite a good, what we would call consistency. You know, when we were talking about that before, where we don't want any lumps. So let me scooch this off. We're going to give it one more mix. Now you're not missing anything. If you fast forward this bit of the video, I do not blame you. You are not missing anything. All I'm going to do is mix it up. Now the problem was my school laptop ran out of battery. So I'm having to film this on my other laptop, and I don't know how to pause the video like I do on my other one, on my school one. So on my school video I can pause it and you don't have to watch all this boring malarkey, but on this video I can't figure out how to do that, so unfortunately you've got to watch the boring bit. Right down to the bottom of the bowl. Make sure we've got rid of all the bits and pieces down there of dry flour and sugar. If you see any lumps, make sure you give them a bit of a squish on the side of the bowl to get rid of them. And There we have it. Right, this is the fun bit now. So I've got 4 bowls because I'm going to make this mixture into 4 different cakes. So I've got 4 bowls, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate out this mixture equally into the bowls. So if I do 2 big spoonfuls in each bowl, and then I can add more anyway. And there's 1 big mixture. 1, 2. To be honest, it looks a little bit like porridge. Get all over the handles of the spoon. There's 1. There's 2. And the last one. Now there's an awful lot of mixture left, which isn't a problem because I can just turn what's left into little cupcakes afterwards. So I'm going to add another spoonful to each bowl. So each bowl's have 3 nice big spoonfuls in it, and then what's left I'm going to turn into cupcakes so I don't miss using any of the ingredients. There we are. Right, so let's save that for later. Right, now the fun begins. So I've got 4 different colour food dyes. Now what I chose to use was a food gel because they say that the colour is stronger. So let's have a look. What colour is this? Blue, you're right. So we're going to add a bit of blue, quite as to how we do this. I think we've got to cut the end off. Let's get some scissors. I've squeezed it and nothing's come out, so I think we've probably got to cut the end of that off. There we go. Cut the end off. Let's pour out some blue. I'm going to put some blue in that one. Now I'm not going to start off with a load to begin with. I'm just going to start off with some little dribbles and we'll see what happens. So the next colour, let's have a look. What's the next colour that we've got? Da, 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 da. Purple. So let's add in a bit of purple. And then we've got, you see this one? Yellow. There we've got a bit of yellow. Because obviously it's got to be nice bright colours, hasn't it? Oh, because it's a rainbow. So let's add some yellow. Now the sponge is actually a yellowy colour, isn't it? But the problem is it's not a bright yellow, and when it cooks it's going to go like a light brown colour. So that's why we're going to give it a bit of dye to make sure that it stays a nice yellow colour. So I'm cutting the end off of the last one. See what colour that one is. So that's a nice pink. Now I was going to get red, but sometimes we found before when we've been cooking in stepping stones that the red food dye doesn't always turn out red, and that would be useless. Right, so this is the purple one. Let's mix in the food dye and we'll see what happens. Oh yay, look at this. Now the difficulty is deciding whether you need more dye or not. Now I'm going to show this to you and I think we can probably guess what decision we would both make with this. What do we think? Do we need more food colour or no? I absolutely agree with you. Yes, we do, because that does not look purple at all. There we go. So let's add in a little bit more and see if we can make it a nice bright purple colour. There we are, that's better. Otherwise, it's just going to look like a bit of a manky colour, isn't it? Which is not what we want in a sponge. Okay. So again, making sure we get it all up from the bottom. We want to make sure all of the mixture is dyed. And remembering when you cook it, the colour will change slightly anyway. There we go, there's our purple one. So I think before we even get started, we know we're probably going to need a bit more blue. So already, I'm just going to add a bit more in, because I think that's what we're going to need. Right, here we go. Ooh, this is a nice blue. I always wish that when you added the colour in, that's what colour the batter turned, but often it doesn't, does it? It often goes much lighter. This actually is quite a nice bluey colour. It's a little bit oceany. Actually, it's gone a little bit pepperminty green, which actually I quite like, to be honest. Right, let's have a look. What do we think of this colour? Be interesting to know your thoughts and whether you agree or not. So this has gone not as blue as I was hoping. It's more of a minty green, so I'm actually going to add a little bit more blue in there. Now, one good thing about these, when you add the food dye in, is that it doesn't change the flavour of the cake. The only thing it does is change the colour. So it doesn't change the flavour, and that's really important, because there's no point having a pretty cake if it tastes revolting. Right, there we go. So we've got a nice sort of bluey greeny colour. So we've got a purple and a bluey green. Let's have a look at what the next one's going to turn into. So we've learnt our lesson, haven't we? And we've learnt that we actually probably need a lot more of this food colouring than we thought. So let me add the yellow in. Now, bearing in mind, this cake mixture is already of a yellowy colour, isn't it? So when we add the yellow into this, I think it's going to work quite well. Not sure what that is. Let's get that out. I think on some of these I have, on one of them, I managed to definitely crack a little bit of egg into the mixture. So I'm just picking out a little bit of shell that I've just found. Right, the yellow one definitely looks like a good colour. Here we go. There we are. That's a good one, isn't it? And now we've got the pink one to go. Now we've already added some pink, but we want quite a bright, oh, it's gone all over my arm. We want quite a bright pink. So I'm going to add just a little bit more of the food colouring. Right, let's give this, oh, look at that. Looks a bit like raspberry ripple ice cream, doesn't it? There we go. So we won't know if I've mixed up enough mixture until we pour it into the bowl, the baking trays. So what we might find is that I might need to add a little bit more, but I think by the looks of this and the looks of the baking trays that I've got, this will be enough to make the cakes. Right, oh, look at that. I know how tempting it is to eat because I feel like I want to now. So there's our 4 colours. So we've got a lovely purple, a blue, a yellow and a pink. And now what we need to do is with the baking trays that I have already washed, so knowing that the oven is on, what we're going to do now is a little trick I once learnt from my mum, who learnt it from her mum. So it's passed on down through the generations, is to use, so we're going to grease them, And to grease these cakes, butter would be better. So we're going to use an empty butter wrapper, the side that the butter's been on, and we're going to just put some butter onto the end of that, and then we're going to rub it around the baking tray. Now you don't need it smothered, but you do need to make sure that the whole of the baking tray is covered. And I'm going to make sure that not only is it on the base of the baking tray, but that it's also up around the sides, because if it's not up around the sides, that's the part that's going to get stuck. Okay, so there's one. Quite an easy process. It's a bit of a mushy process, but that doesn't matter, does it? We like to get a little bit dirty in cooking, because then we can go and just wash our hands. Easy peasy. Okay, there's two. Baking tray number 3. So obviously I'm going to need 4 baking trays, because I've got 4 different colours. So we make sure, like I said, all the way around the sides and right the way down around the bottoms. Cover your baking tray. Last one. There we go. You will be pleased to hear we are nearly there. This is going to end up being a long video. I'm so sorry. Hopefully you can fast forward through the bits that you don't want. As we know, Misha's not very good with modern technology. There's probably a much easier way of doing what I've just done. But, okay, so there is the greased baking trays. And then all we're going to do is we're going to put 1 colour's worth of batter, cake batter, into each of the baking trays. So in goes the green. Well, I'm saying green. It's actually the blue one, isn't it? And we're going to do this with all 4 of them. Making sure you don't leave any bits in the bowl. Okay, and then what you need to do is very gently just make sure that the cake batter that you've just put in is evenly spread all the way around your cake tin, because otherwise, although we want nice round cakes, we would have a bit of a strange shape, wouldn't we? Right, so there is one. Just going to add this bit into the middle. Now another trick I've learned, you don't need to do it much, because I know this can also be quite a tempting thing to do, but another way to make sure that it's evenly spread is to just tap it a few times on the surface. You do need to go a little bit careful with that, obviously. The last thing we want is broken anything. I'm just going to smooth that down a little bit on the top, because what I don't want when it cooks is for there to be a great big pointy out bit, because if there was, I'd have to flatten it down. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to put one cake on top of the next. So there we've got, once we're doing this, we can start to have a bit of a think about how, when the cake is baked, how we're going to put it together. Now what I might do, because I can't figure out how to pause these videos, is do a second one when the cakes are cooled. I can't make this into one big cake until all the cakes are cooled, because the middle bit that's going to hold them all together is going to have buttercream and jam. So if I put that on when the cake is still hot, it's all going to melt, and then the cake, unfortunately, will all fall apart, and that's not what we want. So what I'll do is a second video, when this is all cooked and cooled, I'll do a second video that shows how I'm going to put all of this together into one big cake, because we need it stuck together, and we also need it iced on the top, don't we? So we're going to make it very pretty. Right, there's number 2. So again, 1, 2, 3. And we've got cake number 4. Cake number 4, cake number 3. Misha needs to go back to school and do some counting practice, doesn't she? Right, so let's pour that in. We've also learnt, haven't we, over the last few weeks of doing these videos, we've also learnt how to check a cake. and to check if it's cooked. Can any of you remember how to do that? I'm going to say yes, you're right, because I bet you are. So when it's cooked, when it comes out of the oven, so you've got a grown-up to help you get it out of the oven so you don't burn yourselves. And when it's come out of the oven, you just stick something sharp, like the end of a knife or something like that, into the middle of the cake to check that it's not gooey. So if when you lift the knife out, there's some goo on the end of it, you know that the middle bit of your cake isn't cooked. So you have to put it back in again. If when you dig your knife into the middle bit of the cake, it isn't gooey, and in fact it's clean, then you know that your cake is ready. So there's number 3. 1, 2, 3. And the last one. Hurrah, I hear you shout. Let's get this one in. Now we've already discussed when they cook, the colour is going to change slightly because obviously the mixture's got hot, and we know that when we cook cakes they tend to go a little bit of a golden brown, don't they? So the outside edge of these cakes probably won't be as bright a colour as what we're putting into the oven, which I know can sometimes be a bit disappointing, but what you find is when you then cut into the middle bit of your cake, when you cut a slice, the colours inside are really nice and bright, and that's what we want. So that's why we're going to put some icing on the outside edge of our cake, and then we'll put, when we cut it open, it won't matter that the colours aren't so bright on the outside because we won't see them, we'll just see the super bright colours on the inside. Right, there we go. So those are our 4 cakes. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Let's scrape that off of my finger. I'm not one for wanting waste. Okay, lovely. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Super job. As if by magic, we are done. We have got 4 lovely coloured cakes. Now the reason I'm moving this to the side is to just have a little look. So it says to put them in the oven until golden brown, but it suggests around about 15 to 25 minutes. So what I'm going to do is put them in for 15 minutes, and then I'm going to do my knife test. What I don't want is for them to be over-baked. So I'm going to leave you here, and when I'm done, I promise you, I'll do a second video, and we'll have a look at how we decorate them, and you can see what they look like when they're out. Ooh. Okay, if you're going to do this video, I wish you the very, very best of luck. Here goes.